I want to introduce you to somebody. Over my shoulder is Dr. Horatio Conant. He is one of 11 original members of the church who came together and began this church in 1820. He's somebody whose name you have likely heard, even if you didn't know the person to whom that name pointed. Now, when you drive down Conant Street, for example, in uptown Maumee, you are driving down the street that is named for him. In fact, I am in what we refer to as the Conant Room. It's on the sanctuary level within kind of our heritage hallway, directly across from the infant's nursery. In order to find this room, just look for the white carpet. It's kind of the formal room of the church. Often brides receive people here just before their wedding. Families gather in here just before a funeral. Often there will be Bible studies or small groups that gather in this space. So when you hear that meeting will be in the Conant Room, you'll know where to go. Second level, sanctuary level, right across from the infant's nursery. But Dr. Conant is somebody I want to introduce you to because I think he epitomizes the next purpose or great end of the church I want to talk about a little bit. That purpose is the promotion of social righteousness. The next great end of the church is the promotion of social righteousness. What is social righteousness? Social righteousness is to live rightly in the midst of society. It is to live rightly not just before God, but with our neighbors as well. This purpose fleshes itself out in our mission statement in a very, very important way. And in fact, if you remember in the introductory video I suggested to you, we have a metric for success, and it's not how many people come on Sunday morning, and it's not how much money ends up in the offering plate or anything like that. This is the metric for success, the way we measure whether we are making progress or not. Remember our mission statement. We are the church family, engaging each person to enrich our community for God's glory through Jesus. That metric is the phrase engaging each person. Our congregation believes that we exist in order to help each person in our midst engage with the mission and the kingdom of God so that their life will count for something in this world, so that we can participate with God's Spirit and with Jesus himself, as we say in the Lord's Prayer, as he is bringing his kingdom into the world, just as it is in heaven. We hope to see it more and more and more in the world. Dr. Conant is a great example of that. Yes, he was one of the founding members of the church. He was our clerk of session, kind of the head lay person for a long, long time, but his activity in the world and in this community was not limited to membership in the church. Dr. Conant was a Sunday school teacher in the church. He was an elder of the church. But then he gave himself to ministry beyond the walls of the church. He, of course, came to this area because he was a physician. He was, in a sense, a missionary doctor, offering help to both pioneers and Native Americans in the area. As the Maumee and Toledo community grew, he gave himself to civic leadership. He was, I believe, mayor of Maumee for a time. He certainly was the clerk of courts for Lucas County at the time of the Great Toledo War. Do you know the Great Toledo War? You should look that up. It's a fascinating story about how the state of Michigan and the state of Ohio were at odds for who would own this area. What state would Toledo and this area belong to? Dr. Conant was right in the center of that controversy, and there are legendary stories about his role in that. Ask me, and I will do the best I can to relay those to you. I was reading this morning again in some of the history of Maumee City Schools, and Dr. Conant is listed right there at the beginning as one of the principal players in our community who sought to educate our young people. Because of his faith and his role in the life of this church, Dr. Conant gave himself to the promotion of social righteousness. And so too do we. I think it's important and unique to recognize that probably the principal historic figure in the life of our church is not a pastor. You know, if you go and ask other congregations about their history, it is very, very likely that the key person or people they point to will likely be clergy, but not here. The key historical figure is a layperson, an elder, a doctor who recognized God's call on his life and gave himself in sacrificial ways. He was engaged, to say the least, in the world around him, and we seek to do the same. The way we measure success as a church is not how many people are coming on Sunday, and it's not how great the offering is. It is how many of our folks are we enabling to engage in the work of God according to their passions, their skills, their gifts, and their abilities given to them by God. When you become a member of the church, you are committing not just to relationship with one another, but to ministry together. Now, that may be ministry in the life of the church. Again, we are absolutely dependent on people to come alongside our children and our youth and help them grow as disciples. We're absolutely dependent on those whom God has called and gifted to be small group leaders and Bible study teachers and to serve as elders and deacons, maybe offer musical gifts in certain ways. We need engagement in that way. But we also want to equip our people to engage the world because of and by their faith. And so we have people in this congregation who are giving themselves vocationally away because of their faith. They're teachers, they're lawyers, they're doctors, they're laborers, they are homemakers. And then we have others who are volunteering and serving in all sorts of different ways because of their relationship with the church. For example, we have a tutoring program at the 5th and 6th grade school where members of the church go and develop individual relationships with just one or two kids, helping them to grow as readers, but even more, showing up to be a positive adult influence in the lives of children who may not have that type of influence otherwise. It's just one of the ways we're engaging. Another way is with Mosaic Ministries, one of our critical local partners just up the street in South Toledo. I think we counted up not too long ago how many of our folks were truly engaged in work with Mosaic, and we counted over 100 people. Some of those deeply engaged, serving on their boards or going and dedicating themselves in work every week. Others, not quite as committed, but still buying groceries multiple times a week, participating in book drives and clothing drives and things like that we facilitate for the sake of those we serve in the Old South End of Toledo. Engagement is key. Again, we recognize that when we become a member of a church, now we are committing to engage by giving our time and our talent. God has gifted us all with different talents, and our resources, especially our financial resources for the benefit of God's kingdom. And so we make no apology when multiple times a year we talk about finances. We encourage participation in giving to the life of the church. We are very transparent about where those resources are used because engagement is key. This is work we are called to together. And it is the way I think God will measure our success. In the gospel, Jesus is pictured with people before him at the end time. Often people call this the judgment seat. And the question is, what did you do for the least of these? I mean, did you just talk about your faith? Did you just gather on a Sunday morning? Or were you spending yourself for the priorities of the kingdom and for the people Jesus came to redeem? It's exciting work that God has called us to, and it is an honor and a privilege to join in it together. I'm so grateful to be the pastor of this congregation with so many people lifting their hands saying, I'll help, I'll serve here, I'll give there, I want my life to make a difference. That's what social righteousness means. It's what it meant 200 years ago when Dr. Conant and others founded this church. It's what it still means today. It's how we measure whether we are doing well. And so that's why I'm so glad when we have more and more people coming into our midst, because it makes our community engagement, our engagement as a church, even greater and stronger, because you bring your passions, your gifts, your time, your resources together with others. And we make a real difference in our community and our world.